Good evening, Earthlings. Tonight we are talking about a really freaky movie, The Fourth Kind, Alien Abductions. And we're going to show some really disturbing clips from the film, and you're going to hear our reactions. If you guys have thoughts on these clips, if they freak you out, you think they're totally lame, post them in the comments. We'll talk about it. Are you guys ready to see one of the freakiest clips I've ever seen in an alien horror movie? Here we go.
Yes. I didn't...
Scott?
So what you're seeing there's basically like two versions of the same thing happening in this movie. There's a reenactment by actors, and then there's this footage that they claimed was real footage of these people's possessions and studies, which is actually a hoax. The movie framed this film like real events, and then they reenacted it. So you see the actors, and then you see this grainy, freaky footage that's supposedly real found footage. So tell me, guys, do you think this was a scary scene? Do you think what they did here was freaky, or what?
I thought they did a good job. I mean, even watching it a third and a fourth time, knowing that it was fake, it was still done well. You know, the way they were jumping back and forth, the voice over the VHS tape that needs some serious tracking going on. And then jumping back to the dramatic side of the movie. You know, it's not quite the same, but you can, you know, no one ever does it exactly the same. So, you know, I thought they did it well. Of course, the first time I saw it in the theaters, when I believed it was based on true events, first thing I was thinking was like, why haven't we heard of this? I mean, this is obviously something weird's going on. Why haven't we heard of this? But yeah, I was like, I need to book a ticket to Alaska. I want to check this place out. I want to witness something like this. So yeah, it was a very cool scene, I thought, at least.
So I should catch listeners up on what this film is if you haven't seen it. So basically, a bunch of people have in real life mysteriously disappeared in Nome, Alaska. So when they filmed this movie, they claimed they were alien abductions, but the film combines psychology, ancient religion, and alien abductions all into one film, which is really cool. So when you're watching this, you don't really know if these things that are abducting people are demons possessing people, because they claim to be, or they seem to be Sumerian, which is from the world's oldest religious writings in the cuneiform tablets. And then, there's the psychology layer. And I've never seen a horror movie combine all three of those. But Doug, I really want to know, why did you think this was real? Tell about your experience when you were watching this.
I mean, this came out in what, 2009? So currently I was in a place where I just got back into Indiana. So I was just started a new job. I was focusing more on life, and I kind of fell out of the movies for a while. It used to be, I had a subscription, Entertainment Weekly, read every article, wanted to see what movie was on top and everything like that. And then I kind of hit a point, probably a good 3-4 year period where, work stuff along with relationship stuff and everything else right around that time period, I just didn't get into movies. So I probably should have known this was fake when I walked into it. And like I said before, I was like, why haven't I heard of this with all this footage? As you get into the movie a little bit more, I was like, is this real or is this one of those things? So by the end of the movie, I was starting to fall out of it a little bit, but that was one of the first instances that they were showing the actors along with the alleged true footage, and I was in it. I was ready to go. I was like, okay, I need to find out how to get to Nome. I want to spend a week there, just sit outside, freezing my butt off, looking for lights in the sky. But by the end of the movie, it was like, okay, I got to do some research here first.
Yeah. Well, because anybody who hasn't seen this, the first scene of the movie is the actors standing there saying, "What you're about to see is real footage." And they got sued. If you want to know the story about that, watch our video on our channel talking about this film. But the city of Nome sued the studios, Universal, and they won. So,
Yep.
yeah, Drew, tell us about your experience with this.
My experience was watching this for this podcast. So I had never heard of the movie until just a couple of years ago. And I didn't know anything about it. And we had discussed it a little bit. So going into it, I knew that this wasn't real, that the found footage was just actors and stuff. I thought that the way that they portrayed the found footage was, it was creepy. But I had some issues with this movie. I mean, one, knowing beforehand it's not going to be as creepy, but when you have the main actress come on the screen at the very beginning saying, "Hi, I'm, such and such."
Mia Jovovich.
Jovovich.
Yes. I can't say her name. That's why I said such and such.
Mila Jovovich.
Yeah. When she comes on and says, "I'll be portraying this and we're going to show it with this," and all that stuff, it's like, well, you're kind of sucking me out of the feeling of this movie. Like, you just pulled me right out of it, right? And the other part of it is the way that the actors portrayed in the found footage. I thought they were excellent, right? I mean, because they have to portray them being scared and experiencing something that they've never experienced, and then you side by side it with the reenactment. Well, those actors have to downplay their talents because they can't overact the people who are supposed to be really living it, right? So they can't be as good as that. So they have to be, and it was just awkward. To me, it was just a little off. I think they had potential to make a really great film had they not done the side-by-side reenactment with the real stuff. Like, if they could have found a way to incorporate the found footage and only use the found footage and not the reenactments, I think it would have been even creepier.
That would be interesting.
And truly,
this could have beat Paranormal Activity for most realistic and most terrifying film.
Right. And see, in Paranormal Activity, they did it the right way. They didn't come out and say, "What you're about to see is reenactments of things that actually happened," even though we all know that it was a movie. But it's still the way they had the feeling of home security cameras are picking all this stuff up. The way Blair Witch did, theirs was just handheld cameras, and they didn't acknowledge that we're actors portraying in a movie. They could have done the fourth kind and just said, "Hey, this is based on real events," and then just went along with it, where they showed some of the actual footage. And I don't even think they would have been sued, maybe, if they hadn't portrayed it. If they would have portrayed it that way.
I was about to say the best way they could do it, in that sense, is at the end of the movie, put a paragraph up there and talk about how many people have gone missing from Alaska and in the Nome region and things like that. You don't have to say that we think it's aliens or anything like that. You just start the movie and let it go.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I would say with that is, and I'm fine with it, but without the found footage, it is a little bit of a slow movie. It's a deep movie, and you really have to pay attention. You have to be along for the ride. And that wasn't as popular, I don't think, back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
A movie like Paranormal Activity, I think it only made like 300 only. People would be excited to make
only
300 million today.
It's $1 billion franchise, man.
That back in 2000, it came out in 2007. So even that was, it wasn't like a blockbuster. It was a blockbuster. It'd be considered a blockbuster today, but compared to early 2000s, where every other movie made 300,000, it was just kind of
Yeah.
there. So,
Yeah,
and I
this
think
one
that's the
made, like,
reason why
40
they
million.
didn't just go with the found footage, because as soon as Paranormal Activity came out and you already had Blair Witch, over the next 3 or 4 years, we had like 19 found footage movies, or
Yeah.
the whole Monster in New York, not Everlong. I can't remember the name of the
It's a
movie, but
great
it was
song.
yeah, right. No, it was the kids running around with the video camera, and there was
Oh,
a
9mm, 8mm,
Cloverfield.
or
no,
Cloverfield.
Cloverfield. That's it.
Cloverfield. I was thinking 8
Um,
mil. What is that? That 8mm.
8mm. That's the kid. That's the
the-
actual kid. Sorry, when I say
Yeah.
kids, I meant like college kids.
Oh, okay.
I'm old, remember? But there were just so many found footage movies that I think if it would have done another found footage, it would have totally fallen off the map.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just,
I liked what they did, because I thought it was personally I thought it was original, because we've never
Absolutely,
seen
100%
anybody do
original.
that. But
Yeah,
I
they just
can't believe that they said it was real. Like, they said these events happened and did
that's where
nothing
they messed
to
up.
protect themselves from lawsuits. No screens. I mean, if they had done what you said and they just built on the disturbance of these FBI unsolved cases in Nome, which they think are mostly due to extreme weather and things like that.
Yeah.
But if they had just built upon that, rather than saying that these people were abducted and needles drilled into their heads, and like, I mean, these people, I can't believe, like, the gall of that. Like, it's funny to me, but I'm not mad at them or anything, but I'm just like, wow, you put yourself out there and asked people to sue you, and they did.
Yeah. Well, they went as far as, like, at the end of the movie, there's like 2 minutes worth of, this is what this person went on to do, and this is what this person went on to do, and this is what this person went on to, and that just kept going. It's like, this guy's now doing this, and this. But yeah, I mean, they went as far as creating fake websites, passed off these news stories like they appeared in actual Alaskan newspapers, claiming this, this is from this date on, whatever. The newspaper sued them because it's like, we never published that.
Well,
it was a mess.
In their defense, there had been 2 recent movies that did the exact same thing. I mean, I shouldn't say the exact same thing, but first off, the Blair Witch that came out in 99, they had wanted posters up, the whole thing, and they literally hid those 3 actors for months so they could pull this off. And then the second one before that was we talked about before, Fargo, where I can't remember if it's the beginning or end. It's been a minute, but it literally said, these are based on true events.
That's the one about the treasure that was hidden that people actually looked for.
Exactly. And that was completely fake. It was 100% fiction. Now you got other movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Amityville Horror, A Beautiful Mind, that were based on true events, but just drastically dragged. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that was based on Ed Gein, but he didn't have a family of hillbillies that dressed up in human skin and ran around with chainsaws or anything like that. It was just some guy who collected bodies. Amityville Horror, some stuff went down, but if you watch the original 1970s movie, it's just, I mean, there's portals, there's all kinds of weird stuff going on. So,
that probably did not happen.
Right. And then A Beautiful Mind, they took his schizophrenia and just blew it up. I mean, the guy from A Beautiful Mind was fairly normal. He knew he had issues, but he didn't go down the rabbit hole like the movie showed. So you got those, but they were at least based on something. Where these 3 movies, Blair Witch, Fargo, and then Fourth Kind, literally came out and said these were based on true stories that never happened.
I mean, the only thing that's true here per se is that people disappeared, and there is some debate about the Sumerian writings and things like that. But ancient astronaut theory, the theory that we were like a colony of space aliens, I mean, that got really popular on the History Channel. And that is not something that scholars agree with for the most part. However, it was a hot topic at the time and still is. And I think it's cool that they took something like that that's based in reality, something people were talking about at the time, and put it in the film. But yeah, they stretch some stuff. So you get into the ethics of this. But the faces on the found footage, something happens with their mouths where they just get really long, and it's like this big black hole, and it kind of goes sideways. I think that's the part that haunted me the most. So the scene we just watched, even the reenacted footage, that freaks me out too. The first time I saw this, I was in Japan visiting a friend near the Air Force Base. And so we had a friend, he's like, "Oh, you got to watch this movie." And he told us that it was actually fake after the first found footage scene. So we knew that we weren't watching real events, but it still freaked us out. And the room I was sleeping in that night, it was like an upstairs room at this house in Japan. It had no curtains and it had these huge windows. So in this movie, they keep seeing this white owl, and that's almost like a mind distraction so that they don't realize they're being abducted and experimented on by these aliens. Well, I'm like looking out the window like every 5 minutes in this house at night, like,
Look for
am
an
I gonna
owl.
see an owl? And there's no curtains, there's no blinds, so I can't close it. You're just stuck like sleeping in a fishbowl for like a week after watching this movie. So that was pretty scary experience. Listeners, viewers, I would be curious to see if this movie scared you or you were just kind of meh. But do you guys want to watch the second freaky scene? This is probably the most disturbing one in the
Sure.
entire movie. All right. We'll
Bring
watch
it.
this and then we'll share our reactions. Here we go.
See that? What is
Ugh. So at the end there, after all the fuzz stops and she drops on the couch, like her mouth is still messed up. That's the image that like sticks with me.
I think that was a scene that truly made me be like, okay, we got to do some research on this, because I mean, if that would
Yeah.
truly happen, I don't know, you'd have to like dislocate your jaw, and I don't know
Mhm.
how that heals, because they're interviewing her at the end of the movie and she's
Yeah.
talking like normal. It's like, didn't your mouth fall off like 10 minutes ago? I
She
know there could have
broke her
been some
neck.
time in there.
Yeah,
I
she
thought
broke her
was
neck
dead
but survived.
at the end
Yeah.
of the movie, truthfully. But at the same point, great job. I love the little details. Like in most movies, you would watch that and you would be able to hear every single word that's coming through. When they're doing the translation of the Sumerian, they're showing I blank blank father blank no blank blank pray, or whatever it said. You have to try to see if you can't fill in the blanks. It isn't just obvious, like I am here to take your daughter, never bring her back. You know, he doesn't
Do
just
your
come out.
laundry.
I mean, like I said, even now I have no clue what he was trying to say. I haven't looked
Mhm.
into it too much, and you could play around with words, but
I think I know.
oh yeah,
Well, okay. So leading up to this point, there was another scholar that she had consulted, a Sumerian expert. I believe he got killed in that first scary scene, but he thought that these were Sumerian aliens who created us. Well, later when we get to this scene, he keeps saying "I am," and then there's some stuff blanked out, and eventually he says, "I am God, I am Father." Well, I think the reason he says "I am" so many times is because in the Old Testament, that is the name that God told Moses. So Moses is like, "What is your name?" And God says, "I am." So I'm pretty sure that's what they're referencing in the movie, because at the end, when they interview her after the scene, she says that this thing was pretending to be God, and she knew that wasn't true because he didn't have the character of God. So it is really interesting. Like, they lead you to believe this is an alien being, and then at the end, it's like a fake alien or demon masquerading at God, and you never really get a straight answer about what this is. I mean, you did see a UFO pass over the house earlier in the film, but I don't know. Like, what do you think these things are?
I think that's kind of what they were letting the audience do. It's like, you know what, kind of run with it. You know, yeah, you saw the ship go over the house, but was that, you know, her insanity? You know, this is what she's thinking. Now she's actually manifesting visions where in fact it was her, you know, or these people are being attacked by a demon, maybe, or I mean, well, you could go off the rails and say, you know, we got a shapeshifter here now, and or something like
I thought they were
that.
possessed for a
Mhm.
while.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
so taking on, okay, so they show the footage of the UFO going over the house that got caught on a cop's dash cam. Okay, so let's just take
oh, okay.
yeah,
I forgot
he's
the dash cam.
yeah, he
So,
showed up and it was on his dash cam. So that was a UFO that flew over the house. So let's just say we are dealing with aliens, extraterrestrial life forms here, right? Maybe this movie is going in the way to say that that is our creator. Maybe that is God. Everyone has all the different, and I'm not saying that I believe in all this, but this is,
oh,
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
another take on it. With all the different religions in the world, everyone has their own God, right? And then as you mentioned, like, they have like on the History Channel, ancient aliens. I've never watched it, but I've seen enough shows where they show in the hieroglyphics and writings on the walls all over the world. There's drawings that look like people wearing spacesuits, or this is looks like a flying machine in Egypt, and if you makes you wonder. So I think maybe what the movie is trying to portray is that a long time ago aliens came down. That's where we descended from, and that is the God. Then that's what he was saying. I am. We're your creator. You know. So maybe they weren't demons, but maybe they are the higher life form or the higher being and stuff like that. I don't know.
I don't know too much about it, but
From it.
and I know a lot of people like making fun of it, and I will not go down that route, but Scientology, don't they believe in aliens? It
Yeah,
wasn't, it's not really a god, it's a
I think
extraterrestrial
so.
being that
Yeah.
I
Ancient
think
Astronaut is that theory is going to go similar, that they're one and the same. And I think the film throws all of these ideas at the wall just to make you sort of
let anyone.
decide.
yeah.
So they do keep saying, "What do you believe?" And she clearly doesn't believe they're really God at the end of the film, because she
Right.
says
Mhm.
that. But Yeah, there are going to be other characters who do believe that. There's going to be another psychologist who basically doesn't believe any of this, even when he sees some evidence. Like
Yeah.
he can't explain it, but like he does end up helping her, but he does not side with her in a way, you know? And
It's gotta
they
be
are
tough.
also going to make you
Like that.
question her credibility a little bit because at the beginning of the film, she remembers her husband being murdered. Well, didn't it turn out that he committed suicide and she remembered it as a murder because she couldn't handle the thought of him actually having taken his own life?
Hmm.
Yeah, they played into that, whether or not he commit suicide. She says murdered. They said suicide. And like I said, it's been a little bit since I watched it, but
Yeah.
wasn't she
Well, they show him getting stabbed by a third person at the beginning of the film.
So was that
So
him getting abducted?
I
That's the
don't
way I
know.
took
I
it.
mean,
I thought he got killed by one of the aliens was abducting him, and he died that way.
yeah.
That's how I took it when I saw it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So when
I
she
think
kept,
they're intentionally vague. Like they want us to sit here and try to figure it out.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
there
there's a
there may
lot of
be
questions.
no, like they may not actually even have an answer. The script writers or a concrete answer.
They just sat down and wrote something and said, let everybody else figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the point of this movie is probably like scare the crap out of people. So you
Yeah.
know, it doesn't have to make sense to them, but
Well,
it
there's a
makes
lot of movies that
conversation.
do that too. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there are some decent. I can't come any with off the top of my head, but plenty of good movies out there that kind of leave the ending like. And I'm not always a fan. There's been some really bad ones too, but you know, where it's just like, how does it end? I mean, you know, if they do that in TV too, it's like, you know, Sopranos and Ozark and, you know, all these TV shows, they end on a and it's like, okay, what just happened? Why can't I know? Well,
And then they
let
get
your
canceled and
imagination
nothing is
run.
explained.
No, I mean that's how they end that's how the Sopranos ended the series.
It's just,
They're
yeah, just
literally
Oh,
black.
sitting there in a at a booth, Don't Stop Believing by Journey's playing over the jukebox, and he's just sitting there. All of a sudden you hear the door open because the bell rings, and he looks up and it goes black. End of series, never going to be played again. No one has any clue what happened to Tony Soprano at the end of that. And if I remember correctly, they did pretty much the same thing at the end of Ozark too. So spoiler, by the way, but I mean, come on.
well, I just looked up Chapman University too, because that's where she's being interviewed at the end of the film, right? And this is
Mhm.
supposedly real events, right? There is a Chapman University in California, so I'm surprised they didn't come after this film too.
Yeah.
You'd think they'd use a fake name.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can go after him, but I mean, all in all, what they had to pay like $1,500, $2,500 or something like that. I mean, it wasn't like
Oh, it was $20,000.
Yeah.
For what they
I
got
thought it
sued
was like
for?
2,600 or something like that.
No, I think it was like $20,000.
But still, when they're making millions, I mean, let's see. I've got this up, I think.
Yeah,
Nope,
look up Box
shoot 'em.
Office Mojo. Tell us what the budget was and stuff.
So they had to pay $20,000 to the Alaska Press Club and then $2,500 contribution to a scholarship fund.
All right, so that's
Oh, we're both right.
Yeah. And
So,
and Doug, as you mentioned on our short, you talked about Roger Ebert and how his opinion on a film. You can take that pretty seriously, right? And I just happened to look this up. He gave it 1.5 stars out of 4.
oh wow,
He
didn't like it, huh?
he did not like this compared to Paranormal Activity and the Blair Witch Project.
How come? What's his reasoning?
It doesn't really say. I have to look into that a little bit more, but maybe because we'd already seen a few like this, and it just didn't have. I don't know. I mean, if I had to guess, it would probably be the same reason that I would rank it lower than those, only because they pretty much come right at the very beginning. And we're actors and we're doing this, and this is real footage over here, and this is gonna really scare you. And now you're like,
Yeah, I guess that does kind of take it out. I didn't think about it that way. I mean, all of a sudden you're just watching Mia.
Yeah, for the whole time, I know who you are now, and I can't
Yeah.
get it out that you're supposed to be this person over here. So
That's
I wish they
interesting.
would have cut that part out and just kept like maybe lesser known names, like actors who are on TV shows. You don't really see them in movies, and had them do it, and then or have them investigating it, and then they just show the footage, and like, oh, this is real footage, stuff like that. I don't know.
Mhm. I've seen the first 3 Paranormal Activities. I never made it all the way through Blair Witch. I should probably try to give that a shot. But of all the scary movies, I mean, this was in my top 2 or 3 scariest movies I've seen for me personally.
Oh, wow.
But I think some of it depends on what you bring into the movie, like what you believe. I mean, the 3 of us we were not equally scared by this movie, but we basically have similar beliefs spiritually and stuff. But for whatever reason, it bothered me.
No, the reenactment scenes, not the reenactment scenes, the supposed found footage scenes were actually really well done.
Yeah.
They were creepy. They were so creepy. But then they go back to an actress portraying the other lady, and then it's like, okay, now this just isn't as cool anymore. Or you're in the middle of the reenactment, and then they go to the found footage, and then they go back to the reenactment, and it's like, oh, just pick one. Stick with that one.
Yeah, and 2, yeah, thinking about it did kind of take me out of it a bit because, and no offense against anybody, look at me, but the woman they had in the found footage was much less attractive than Mila Jovovich.
Well, they didn't even look
She is a
anything like.
beautiful, I mean, she was a model, I believe, and just, this beautiful woman. And then, yeah, this woman obviously has been through hell if the found footage stuff is real, but she's just very, very homely, and that can kind of take it out too. It's like you went too far to the extreme, I guess, is the way I'm seeing it.
It's like they didn't look anything like each other.
Yeah.
They didn't act
They
like
could have
each
found
other.
somebody a little bit less, or that looked more like one of the actors.
They do that a lot, even in like biopics and stuff, where they choose somebody who looks more Hollywood, and then they show the picture of the people at the end. And you're like, that doesn't look anything like them.
No, I watch a lot of like true crime shows. So they'll be interviewing the person that this happened to.
And then they show the reenactment.
And then they show the reenactment. It's like they look nothing alike. They're like 20 years in age difference. They're different color hair. In some cases, more teeth. Just like,
you know what franchise is really bad about that? The Conjuring. The Warrens.
Yeah, but I love those movies.
Nothing like the individual horror Warrens of real life.
But we're not going to bash on the Conjurings because those movies are really good.
We may talk about those movies someday. So I thought this movie bombed, but it actually made 47 million worldwide on a budget of 10 million.
Yeah,
so I don't know how much they spent on marketing.
And then they had to dish
out.
It's
usually double. So if the movie costs 10 million, they usually drop 10 million into marketing. Yeah, you can usually, that's the way most people estimate, or at least whatever.
Sorry, had you just said that like 5 minutes ago?
No, I looked it up, but I never got around to saying it. I got it right here. Yeah, 10 million estimated budget, 25 million US and Canada, another 23 overseas.
Not bad.
Minus $20,000 for lawsuit.
Yeah.
So it was a wash.
It made 27 million. And remember, this came out in when 2007, 2009.
So they might have made like 4 million.
So, I can't remember. Back in 2009, were people still renting DVDs?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
DVD. Yeah, you were buying DVDs. We didn't do this whole streaming business until.
Okay, so right there, that movie could have made another 2 million, 3, 4, 5 million easily.
Yeah,
because every single blockbuster, if around or video store. You know, it's a new movie, so they're probably going to buy. It made 47 million, so we'll buy 5 copies of it. Well, how many blockbusters are there around the world? You know, each one of those bought 5 copies of this movie. How many family videos are there? Each of them probably bought anywhere between 3 and 5 of those movies. You know, the local video stores that we grew up on, you know, some of those were still around, and you know, they probably bought a couple copies, not to mention the people who actually went out and bought their own copies or bought it. You know, Amazon may have been starting just to start selling videos online or something.
Blu-rays and all that stuff were big, so everybody was
so
buying
you know,
on
this
Blu-ray.
movie could have easily made another 10 million on top of what they made at the box office.
So
that's the big difference between then and now. Well, it wasn't enough to justify a sequel. Plus, right around the corner, Blockbuster shut down and everyone else followed suit. So
there is one Blockbuster left.
Only.
It's in Washington, and I want to go.
Oh, wow.
They still make the popcorn. I can still smell Blockbuster.
There is one story thread that they could pick up on and resolve should they ever make a sequel, which we don't think they will. But remember how she lost her son because he basically thought she was nuts and didn't want to have anything to do with her. He got taken away, right? Well, willingly. And they stayed estranged according to the end of the film. So it would be interesting to either bring them back together or follow his story. Like something happens to him and then he realizes that she wasn't crazy and like reconnects with her. I could see something like that being interesting, because I was like, wow, I mean, the movie's probably trying to tell you about tragedy, right? But I was like, wow, that's depressing. Like her son was just like, see ya.
Yeah,
and
it was
like
definitely
never
not a
saw
happy
him again.
ending.
That's brutal.
If they do a sequel, they cannot do it in the same format that they did the first one. You cannot have found footage.
No,
you cannot do it
at this point.
It would not work, because you're right. It's a story now. Now you're branching out and doing characters, right?
And you'd have to do 2 more.
Yeah,
because if we're seriously following the son at this point, then there's something about the family. So
and it gets into,
you have to tell that story, and then the third one is, are they going to get the daughter back or are they not? You know,
which is exactly what Paranormal Activity did. The first one, was excellent. I mean, it was freaky. It was scary. Even knowing that it wasn't real, it was really scary. And then the second one is like, hey, this takes place a couple years earlier, and it's different characters, but then you find out that they're related to the other people. And then the third one is, so then it becomes a story, and it doesn't have the same impact, because now it's like, oh, now we're just following the same family that just has had all this weird stuff. It was better when it was individuals. So if they do another fourth kind, you pick a whole new people and say, hey, look, we've got all these, real footage of interviews of people who've been abducted, and this is what we got. But you have to go with a completely different cast. You have to go with a new
so
cast.
You just say drop the story altogether. Don't worry about
that. We're going on to, here is some more of people who have experienced this stuff, and this is what they came out with.
Yeah, but at the beginning of all this found footage nonsense, that made $47 million. So today it's,
I don't think they should. They shouldn't do it. And
I think it could be cool to do a non-found footage version of this, like a sequel, where and we had just one case in this movie, right? Well, they could have like a detective looking at all the people who have disappeared in Nome over the last 50 years, right? Because the disappearances started in the, I don't remember when they started, but they go clear back into the 70s, maybe earlier. And that could be interesting, because he could be trying to figure out like, what's the common link? You can see him staring at his like wall of disappearances with all his yarn connecting all the pieces of evidence. I think that would be my kind of movie, because I like detective stories, but like, what about like a detective alien story? I mean, we don't see much like that.
Yeah.
Well,
like I said, they would have to do, they just couldn't do the same that they just did. It would have to be a different format.
Plus, we already know they lied to us, so it would.
And we know it
work a
lied. So
second
what's the
time.
point? The common denominator in all these missing cases in Alaska they're called bears. That's the missing bears, snow, and forest.
Yeah, I read the mayor of Nome
Maybe
comment on
Bigfoot.
this, and yeah, and I mean, police and all of them say that these are mostly like natural causes. They think. I don't know about all of them,
Well, I
but
mean, Alaska's so big, right?
Yeah, that's the
And
thing.
it's so
yeah.
wild, and you can get lost out there. And
Or you could
in
just move.
2 hours, you can be covered by snow.
Yeah.
You know, if you break a leg and you're stuck and you're sitting there trying to pull yourself and you finally just pass out because of all the pain and the
then hypothermia.
tiredness, and then a snowstorm comes through and you're gone.
And
they're not going to see it. They're not going to find you.
And the amount of like bears in Alaska.
Yeah.
I mean,
The bears will find you before the people will, and the bears
exactly
will eat you and save you for later.
Right. Like I said, Alaska is the Australia of North America. Everything up there will kill you.
I do have a couple of facts on this film.
I do too. I think it'd be great.
You want to hear some movie facts?
Absolutely.
So there is a weird Sumerian phrase that's uttered during one of the creepy scenes. It's Zemabu Eter, which apparently translates to spirit whom you cannot be saved from. So that kind of fits with the like, you can't get away from these aliens. They will find you. And do you guys know the band The Mars Volta?
Nope.
I've heard of it.
So they're like a
What do you think about it?
psychedelic prog rock band. I mean, they've got some Latin influences. A lot of them are from Texas. I started listening to them back when they were a band called At the Drive-In, and then they broke up and split into Sparta and the Mars Volta. And their singer, Cedric, he is like apparently really influenced by owls. So like he references. Oh, wait, I said that wrong. He's really influenced by this movie, but it's the owls in the movie that he took and started referencing a lot in his music. And some people thought it was like a reference to a David Lynch movie, but it was actually this movie because he says he loves The Fourth Kind because it made him feel understood. So I don't know what that means. I mean, he must resonate with some of the characters.
He's an alien.
But he said there's also a giant owl that is worshipped at a Bohemian grove, which is another reference. And he says he's also not shy about his David Lynch influence. So if you listen to their movie, or if you listen to their music, not movie, it is really out there. And then it comes back for a part that's very structured and makes sense. And then it goes off into, could be a UFO, something like that land. So yes, you should check out the Mars Volta.
Check that out.
Well, guys, any more thoughts on this one? What about a recommend? Do you recommend this movie, or do you say stay away?
It's so hard because we spoiled it. I mean, if you know about the movie, then I'd say, your choice. We're giving you an idea. I liked it. I had fun with it. It's not a fast moving movie. There is a lot of talking. There's a lot of investigating and they're going for more the mental than anything else. And, there's a lot of mental and medical talk. I mean, a lot of stuff they were talking about. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just assume that means something to do with the brain. But at the same point, I can kind of get into those movies. Not every movie like that, but the movies. I mean, same thing. My second favorite movie of all time, The Exorcist. That's a slow freaking movie.
Yeah,
it's not action, jump to the jump scare. I mean, it's like some creepy dream and there's that face, and then it's a bunch of talking and it's a bunch of this, and something falls down and her candle turns into a flamethrower, and just little things here and there. But it's kind of a slow pace movie, and I kind of dig that because A, it adds to the story, but B, it adds to the suspense.
It's a good builder. It builds and builds and builds,
Mm-hmm.
and then it has a great payoff.
So yeah, just know. I mean, I guess yeah. If you go into it and not look at it as a found footage, this is real movie, and as a just a different style of movie, because there's very few movies that have done this. Where it actually, side by side, here's the real footage and here's the fake. Like when they did Bohemian Rhapsody. You had to go on YouTube, and if you watched, they were Rami Malek did an awesome
Yeah, he did.
job, but they didn't show that in the movie where they could have. So it's a different style of movie. But so I would say give it a shot. Watch it for a half hour. Watch it through the scene where the dude goes and floats off the bed. After that, if you're not into it, turn it off. Not
Yeah.
going to hurt my feelings, promise.
Yeah. I could get. I could go along with that. Yeah, I knew before going in that it was fake, so I already had kind of a different mindset. So I can. So if you're watching this and now watching it knowing in advance, it does take a little bit out of the suspense from the film. However, the found footage scenes are done really well, and if you're watching it in the dark and you can get the sound up, it will give you chills, and you will still be creeped out by it.
Absolutely.
So it's worth watching it. If even if the rest of the stuff is slow, it's worth watching just to get, the found footage. And if you want to make it even better, sit down and watch it with someone who's never seen it, and don't tell them that it's fake.
That's what I think this movie's perfect for, pranking people.
Yes.
Have a Halloween party. Don't say
Lock that in.
anything about, you say, you've got to watch this movie and then put this on. And maybe even hype it up. Tell them that all these people have really disappeared in Nome, Alaska. Don't tell them why, just then put the movie on.
And then you can get enjoyment out of watching them wet their pants.
Yeah. I liked the blending of psychology, religion, and aliens. I thought that was unique. I liked the two perspectives. I thought that was unique. So I'm going to give this movie like 3 stars. I thought it was scary. So, I mean, I'm into all the stuff that the movie was talking about in terms of interests. So, but spiritually, there are a couple interesting things here. There is a theory, like some people believe that demons and aliens are the same thing. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I think part of the reason they think that is because the Harvard research shows that people who believe they were abducted by aliens, they have a common set of interests, basically. So there's a certain profile of people, according to Harvard, who has that kind of experience, and it's usually people who like dabble in New Age or witchcraft, and so that could be a correlation, not a causation. So you can't necessarily say that's why they had this experience, or maybe they were predispositioned to believing in abductions. I don't know how to explain it. I just know that it is a theory that a lot of people have, that the reason people see UFOs is they're demons. I'm not gonna say either way. I don't know.
I was going to mention that. I'd say that's kind of a cool concept. I was like, do they explain what hell is? I mean, you said a pit. I mean,
what
around
I saw
the world
in this
lately, place kind of pittish. So, maybe that's what it is. They aliens come down and they possess people and make them do bad things. I don't know. I don't believe that. I'm just saying that's a possibility.
Well, I almost think this movie may have been aware of that, and that might be why they kind of try to blur the line between, are these evil beings aliens or are they demons, and why are they masquerading as God? Like, you really can't tell. The movie's almost trying to make you think through that or something. But in the Old Testament, there's kind of a misnomer. People are taught today in Christianity, which is what my religion is. People are taught that there are no other gods. There's just God, right? But in the Old Testament period, they kind of believed that, but they had a different way of looking at it. To them, there's like, God is the only all-powerful being, right? And under him, he created angels. Well, they called the angels gods up until close to the New Testament period, but they weren't thought of as all powerful like God. They were like lower gods.
Lowercase g.
Yeah. And there was basically a law that, like, hey, you're not supposed to contact the dead. You're not supposed to contact these other beings, these other gods, angels. And the reason was you don't know which ones are good or bad. So when you make a call to the spiritual realm or to the realm of the dead, you don't know who's on the other end. And half the Old Testament is about evil spiritual beings trying to kill humans or tempt them into corrupting themselves. So in this movie, those beings are depicted as evil and terrifying and trying to trick you. So I think that's a real biblical concept that is weaved into this film as part of its foundation. So I found that interesting. And so you could watch this movie and be like, dude, I'm never trying to contact anyone from the spiritual realm. Like you could get a biblical message like that. That's kind of cool, I think. So.
Yeah.
Could be. Be fun. Different. I'm not saying that's fun. Don't say it's fun.
It's
It
fun.
would be,
Conjuring.
it would be-
I don't want to be
I don't know.
abducted.
Yeah, it could be
Wouldn't
good.
mind
It
being
could be
abducted.
fun.
well, I mean, I don't want to be abused by any way, but I wouldn't. I want to be abducted like the third kind dude.
Yeah, like Richard Dreyfuss went up. They were all cool
Into
about
the
it.
spaceship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, either that or the real story of Fire in the Sky. That guy said they healed him and they were nice to him and things like that. So yeah, I just want to go up and say, hey, what's the deal?
No probing.
I'm not rolling the dice, man, but you can.
Yeah, let us know how that worked out for you.
Yeah, that's a chance.
Call us from space.
I'll give it a shot. Depends
All right,
how my
guys, well-
barrier works.
We have a kind of docu-style episode on this movie on our channel if you want to go check that out. And we will be back soon. We've got a whole bunch of coverage on other alien movies on our channel. So check that out. We'll catch you again soon.
Thank you.
Good
for
night,
watching.
everyone.